Joining us now to discuss this and more, MSNBC political analyst Susan Del Percio, a Republican strategist, and Basil Smikle, a Democratic strategist. So, Basil, you heard in that reporting, 35,000 people signed up to vote immediately after she posted on Instagram last year encouraging voter registration. How big of an impact could this endorsement have?
It's an extraordinary endorsement, and it could be a huge impact. I mean, as the reporting has said, she, in many ways, is trying to chart a future course for the millions of young women who she considers her followers and supporters. That's amazing. It's impactful. And the question now is, how does she operationalize this? How does she mobilize this? Voter registration opportunities are incredible, going forward in terms of what she can do at her individual concerts. But just using her social media platform in and of itself to talk about the candidate and to urge people to get out to vote and where they couldn't get out to vote is extremely important. Just another quick note. This dovetails with what I expect to be an important outcome of last night's debate, not just in terms of the narrative around Kamala Harris's candidacy and her presentation as presidential, but the fundraising. How important is the fundraising going to be going forward, particularly after this endorsement, to try to mobilize voters now that we're about to start, if not have already started, early voting?
I'm sure she will talk about their fundraising at some point very soon. Susan, this morning, Trump is commenting on the Taylor Swift endorsement. He called into Fox, and he said that he is not a Taylor Swift fan. He said she'll probably pay a price for it in the market. That's a direct quote. So 12 hours after the debate, who is paying the price?
Well, Donald Trump. And yet it was the second woman that night who got under Donald Trump's skin.
Yeah, that's right.
So not just the vice president, but Taylor Swift did it and really delivered, because we also know that Donald Trump has a problem with not being called a strong performer, which were the headlines on the debate. And then he loves celebrities. He's always complained that he doesn't have more celebrities at his event, especially the convention. So now the biggest celebrity in the world comes out for his opponent. That had to hurt.
And so, Basil, I have to ask about a moment that happened even before the first question of the debate. What do you make of the handshake moment?
That was an incredible moment, because we were talking about this earlier. I remember him walking around behind Hillary Clinton on the debate stage in 2016 in a way to try to, show some sort of power or dominance over her. Kamala Harris flipped that. She went right up to him, first out of the gate, before he could even get settled and say, hey, I'm Kamala Harris, by the way. And to me, just from that moment on, and I tweeted this last night, she made it a point to make sure that any reference to her not being a smart woman would never come out of his mouth again. And she showed him that from minute one on that debate stage. It was an incredible power dynamic shift that I'm sure got under his skin and unsettled him for the entire debate.
Susan, there was another moment that drew applause from Harris supporters, and that was when she looked right at the camera and she told the voters to attend a Trump rally. Let's watch this part.
You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you.
People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics.
Harris supporters see that moment as a carefully laid trap for Donald Trump. Do you think Republicans see it that way, too?
It was absolutely. I mean, it's almost like she had a dog and was offering treats every 5 minutes. Want a treat? And the dog would bite up, and that was Trump looking to grab onto whatever she said that got underneath his skin. And that comment just went for it. And it serves two purposes. One, it does get under his skin. But also, look where he had to spend his time talking. Look what he was talking about.
On defense. On talking about crowd size, again.
Exactly. Not talking about the economy, not talking about immigration, the things that his followers want him to talk about. So it was served two purposes, and I think that was That and the Wharton moment, when she talked about economists from Wharton also saying his economic plan would be bad for the economy, were just brilliant.
Do you think there will be a second debate? Because, you know, she's already, after the debate, immediately, Basil, saying, let's do this. Donald Trump is saying he's less inclined, but I won, and it was the greatest debate ever.
All right, before I answer that, can I just also ask, what is this fascination that Trump and J.D. Vance have with pets? And conversation about people eating. I mean, it's the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard. And why is a nominee of a major party on a platform like that talking about folks eating their pet? I don't understand
Completely
that.
unprovoked.
I do not understand that. But to answer your question,
You just had to get that
I had to get that
I
out.
know.
But as a person that owned a cat, yeah, I have to get that off my chest. But to answer your question, look, I would love to see another debate, but I don't think you really need one, quite frankly. I don't think he might want an opportunity to get back at her. But the reality is, if I were her, I would say, no, we did exactly what we needed to do. We're done. We're done. And if you're going to go on a stage and engage me like that, we're not the same. We're done.
But there are voters
That's
we
a great
heard
point.
from that say they want more policy, more substance. So perhaps that's an opportunity in the second
She
debate.
can give them one in an interview without him standing next to her.
Okay, we'll take that interview. Sign me up. Thank you, Susan
Right here.
Basil Smykol. I appreciate you guys.